with Detroit Lions fullback Jason Cabinda. Just an amazing story. The former undrafted linebacker out of Penn State becomes a fullback in Detroit, and he's one of the best fullbacks now in the entire NFL. The once practice squad player who nobody wanted to draft is now one of the best players at his position in the NFL. He's a super back in Detroit, and he has a super story off the field as well. We will talk about that. Of course, we'll talk about his head coach, Dan Campbell, and expectations for the Lions, Jared Goff, and much more on this episode of Inside the Huddle, presented by Sportskeeda. You come from an untraditional background. People think of these NFL players and they think of you guys as you're all rich, you're all freak of nature athletes, and you've had it easy, but that's not your story. I mean, you're undrafted, you switch positions, you've played just about every position. How
played every position by the time I'm done.
how tough has this journey been from the time you were at Penn State to going undrafted? You're out with the Raiders. Now you're with the Lions. You switch positions. How crazy has this journey been for you?
Yeah, it's been nuts. Very unorthodox. It is not the normal journey that a lot of guys go through. You know, it's rare that you see a guy start in the league as a certain position and change position, let alone change other sides of the ball, you know. So to go from defense to offense, now that's obviously a big transition, especially to do it in the league. But you know, I think for me, it's really just been about, you know, my core values and working hard and finding my role and really just trying to be the hardest worker. That's really where my foundation has always been, really since the beginning of my career. I mean, I've really seen every side of the spectrum from when I was a kid and I was out of shape and was completely not ready to play football yet. To being where I am now and signing a 2-year extension. You know, I've seen every part of the spectrum. So I think that kind of puts everything in perspective from a standpoint, but it's been hard. You know, it's been tough. I've had to make a lot of transitions from high school, mostly playing offense, to going and playing a linebacker at Penn State and learning how to play linebacker, to then, you know, getting to the league, being undrafted, going through what being undrafted meant. You know, having to find that confidence again and knowing that I'm good enough and knowing that I belong and finding, you know, my way from that perspective. And, you know, I'm lucky that I had, you know, some older guys that took me under their wing and showed me the ropes and stuff like that. But, you know, to me, it's always been, you know, getting into a building, seeing who the hardest working guys are and trying to outwork them and seeing what exactly keeps those guys around and trying to find, you know, my niche when it comes to that. So, yeah.
I imagine coming out of Penn State, you go undrafted, you're probably hurt. It's probably a tough time thinking, okay, I belong in this league. I can do this. You probably have that confidence. Are there moments through that you're just scared in the sense of, I don't know if this is going to work out. And I don't know, even though I believe in my heart I can be in the NFL, I don't know if this is going to work out. Do you have moments like that where you're questioning your confidence and you're questioning things?
Yeah, no doubt, because, you know, you just don't know. Like, before you get to the league, obviously you grow up watching so many guys, watching stars, guys that you idolize and want to be like and all these things. And, you know, most of them get drafted, you know. So being undrafted, I didn't really have a certain player as an example of like, oh, that's a guy who got undrafted and he made it work and da-da-da. You know, I didn't really have an example of that. So that was definitely tough, was first getting to the league and finding that confidence and having to make plays and put myself in a position to be like, nah, you know, I do belong here. I know I can do this, you know, stuff like that. But I think at that point, it just put such a big chip on my shoulder of just wanting not necessarily to prove people wrong, but to really just to prove my people right. You know, I had people that were depending on me. I had people who were rooting for me so hard. I mean, my mom is my number one fan, and the way she roots for me and has always been there for me, like, and being able to do it for her, I think is where I've drawn a lot of my motivation from.
Yeah. And you talk about your mom. Your mom is from Cameroon, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so what's that?
My entire family, my mom, my dad, both my sisters, all born and raised in Cameroon.
Were you born there or were you born in the United States?
No, so my mom was pregnant with me on the way here.
Okay. And so I imagine for your parents and your family, becoming a professional football player growing up in Cameroon is not, is not a real job. Like it's just.
Absolutely not. I think like in our households, the only real jobs that exist is like you're either going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, something of that nature. Like, if you want to do anything from an artistic standpoint, like be a singer or be an artist, that's like kind of like a joke,
So are you a joke?
Or even athletics, not necessarily that I'm a joke, but it's like, okay, yeah, it's kind of like he's just doing this for fun, he's just doing this in his spare time. This isn't something that can really be something, so yeah, it's definitely a very unconventional route when it comes to our culture. But I mean, my mom knows the amount of work and dedication I put into this, how much I care about it. And I made it shake.
Yeah. And I imagine as much as your mom loves you, she probably doesn't care whether you're a football player or a doctor, as long as you're happy and, successful. And so does mom, as much as she supports you, also, does she in your ear going, have a backup plan? Or is she just going, no, chase it, chase it, chase it?
Oh, I'll tell you a quick story that'll that'll answer that question. So I was in high school. I was always a very good student. I always had really good grades. So when it was time to really get recruited, once schools felt like I was good enough to play there, I was receiving offers and stuff. And I had good SAT scores. I wouldn't say they were great, but they were they were pretty good. And Yale was on the verge of offering me. And when my mom heard schools like Yale and Harvard calling, those are the schools that really got her ear, because for her, academics came first. Football came second, no matter what. Like, yeah, football's cool. This is nice. You're going to be able to go to school for free. But like you said, the plan B is what matters, because at the end of the day, at any given play, football can be over and done with. So I go to Yale, had a great camp, the coaches love me, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, you know what? We want you to take that ACT to really strengthen up your score so we feel completely comfortable, offering you a scholarship. And, at the time I told my mom, like, Yale and Harvard, those schools are cool. I don't truly know if this is a school I'm going to go to. My mom said, you're going to go take that ACT. I don't care what you're talking about. Academics come first, and you have the opportunity to go to an Ivy League school. So I actually ended up taking the ACT basically just for my mom, just so I could earn a scholarship to Yale. So that's kind of a funny story I tell people, but that kind of just shows how important academics and how important like that plan B aspect was for my mom. Because at the end of the day, she knew that at any given play, football could be done. And she wanted to make sure that the decision that I made at the end of the day was going to be a 40-year decision. So
Right. And obviously now she has to be just thrilled, especially, last year scoring that first touchdown and everything else.
Yeah, no, she is as proud as can be. I mean, anybody will tell you, I think, people saw her on Hard Knocks and really got a good taste, of her personality and how she is. I mean, she's so supportive of me. I mean, I don't think she missed a Penn State home game. I mean, she was at every single home game. In high school, she didn't miss a game, no matter where it was. I mean, she's always been my number one. Rain, shine, hot, cold, snow, whatever the weather or the conditions, she's always been there in the stands. That's always meant a ton to me.
So how do you go from being a defensive linebacker at Penn State to being a fullback with the Lions? I know we're jumping a bunch of years, but where does that transition happen? I know fullback, linebacker, I guess they're somewhat similar in ways, but where does that transition happen? How does that go down?
Yeah, obviously I went to Penn State, played linebacker 4 years. I had a great career there, and then transitioned into the league and really played linebacker my first 2 years in the league, played defense still. And then was really going into my third year, going to my third training camp. And it was really like, 2.5 weeks into training camp that I made this transition, really out of need for the team. And also just from a perspective of, we had Matty P and those guys, they had brought in a lot of older vets that they expected to, come in and play, that they had paid. And really, I was a great special teams player. But, they had felt like that I could beat out, the fullback. I mean, I was always a super physical player. I mean, that was has always been one of the biggest strengths of my game has been my physicality. And I was kind of joking around with the linebacker. I mean, not the linebacker, the running back coach. Kind of after we had, I think it was like one-on-ones with the running backs. I was like, man, you need some more dogs in your room. Just messing around with him. And he had passed me in the building like the next day inside the facility. He was like, man, what would you think about coming in and playing a little fullback? I was like, hey, I'll play wherever the team needs me. I'll come try whatever out. And I really thought it was kind of more of a joking conversation, but within that week, it got really real. I mean, it was like 2 practices later that, Coach Caskey at that time, our running backs coach, had come in and was like, hey, we want you to come get some offensive snaps at fullback, and I mean, I came in and we ran a few ISOs and I blew up a few linebackers and they're like, oh, now we think we might have something here, and that was kind of the vibe. And I really ended up finishing off the rest of that training camp playing fullback, and then ended up winning the job by the end of training camp at fullback. And I mean, the rest was really history. I was used pretty sparingly that first year in Matty P's offense, and then obviously when Coach Campbell and them came in, I felt like I had my best off season. Because really that whole offseason, that first time that I started playing fullback, I was still doing all linebacker drills, all defensive stuff. So I was still getting used to the movements and running routes, catching the ball, those kinds of things consistently. So I finally had a year of offseason of really doing offensive drills, running back drills, cutting, and kind of getting back to my high school offensive ways, and I felt a lot more comfortable going into, that season that year. And Coach Campbell was able to, use me a lot in the offense that we were running. And we ran a lot of heavy personnel, a lot of 21, a lot of 22, those type of formations. And I mean, by the end of the year, I was even getting snaps at tight end. So, my role has really just continued to increase as I've gotten more and more comfortable. But it has definitely been a journey, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I'm sure now you're in Deuce Staley's ear, like, Coach, give me the ball, give me the ball. I know we have DeAndre Swift, but give me the ball too.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Whenever I could put a little coin in Coach Staley's ear to get me the ball, I definitely do that.
Yeah, was it making that transition when you get approached about that? Is it a gamble to you? Do you have concerns? Because when you look around the NFL, the fullback position is kind of like the lost art in the sport. I mean, there's not too many teams that have a fullback anymore.
Yeah, no. Without a doubt. And I think that's why we have the coaching staff that we have, because they are really committed to running the football. They're committed to running the football. They're committed to the heavy personnel, the 21, that kind of stuff. Like you said, I mean, there might only be, I want to say maybe 18 teams out of the 32
yeah, if that, right. Yeah.
So, to be in that position and be able to take advantage of that has been really awesome. And, we're trying to bring fullbacks back. I think more and more teams are starting to see, and that's the cool thing about the game. You've seen the past kind of, well, let's say 5 to 10 years, maybe, that the league has somewhat become really pass happy. And we see these cycles in the league of things get real pass happy, real speed oriented, and then things kind of cycle back when, defenses or offenses start adjusting to each other, and then the heavy personnel comes back. So I think it's just another example of the cycle coming back and being like, okay, we've been pass heavy for a while. Now we have smaller linebackers nowadays. We have linebackers that are really built for speed, built for just covering. Okay, let's bring the fullback back and let's blow these guys up. So you're starting to see that again. I think that's kind of where that comes from.
Obviously, you have a lot to prove, not only with the Lions, but for yourself in your career. You're so young in your career. Do you also look at this team as a lot to prove as well that you're on? You're kind of all on the same boat. You want to get to the playoffs and do it for Dan Campbell. Jared Goff has a lot to prove after what he's gone through from LA now to Detroit, and he sees the guy he's traded for win a Super Bowl. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have, I don't want to call it a chip on your shoulder, but are insanely motivated going into this season.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And I think we've obviously, revamped the offense. We've given Jared more, weapons. I mean, we've had 2 good drafts in a row now. These young guys are starting to put themselves in a position where they're proving themselves. So, I mean, I really like the team that Coach Campbell's building. And I think
really the biggest thing is the fact that we're filling the building with people who truly want it, with people who have that grit, who have that Detroit attitude, who really love the game. Because I think in a lot of organizations, when you get to this level and you're really, you're putting such a pounding on your body, guys are getting paid now. I mean, obviously money's involved and all those kinds of things. I think it starts to really sort out, who really truly loves the game, who really does this for the right reasons. And I truly feel with whether it's a draft pick or whether it's an off-season signing that we've made, I truly feel like we are building up with guys who truly love this, who are truly dedicated to this and dedicated to becoming the best players that they can be. And I think when you have that and you get that togetherness and you start to build that culture, I think that's when the winning really comes. And I really, truly believe that we're building that here.
You talk about that fire and having that personality. Is one of those players, Aiden Hutchinson? I mean, as well as anyone, the importance, being a former defensive player, how important that defensive line is. What have you seen from the rookie? Do you see that kind of fire so far as you guys get ready for the season?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I think, one of the biggest things that you look at when you talk about that grit, that determination, who has that fire, I think you watch the way a guy finishes. You watch the way a guy finishes towards the ball, especially defensive linemen. I mean, obviously you'll have plays that can go deep or can really be really out of the way of a defensive lineman. And you'll see a ball get thrown 15 yards down the field and you see Aiden Hutchinson turning and running towards the ball. Like, when I see that, that's when I see that grit. I see that determination. I see that, okay, no matter what, I'm going regardless, as long as the whistle hasn't been blown, I'm going 1,000 miles per hour. Like, those are the kind of guys we're bringing in. Aiden definitely has that. I mean, I'm really excited for him. Obviously, he has all the tools, the athletic ability, the frame, the size, the strength, all those things, explosiveness, to be successful at this level. Obviously, he comes from the Big Ten as well. I don't love that he comes from Michigan. I'm a Penn State guy. We are and always will be. But, obviously I have my battles with Michigan. I mean, they have a bunch of really gritty players and really talented players. So I'm really excited for the year he's going to put together.
It seems like Dan Campbell, I mean, he is kind of embodies that. I mean, it seems like he attracts those guys. And I believe I saw a press conference where he compared himself to you. If there was one player on the team or in the NFL that kind of embodies who he is, I believe he pointed at you. How similar are you to your head coach?
Yeah. I mean, you see some of Coach Campbell's tape, man. Like, when you see some guys play, you could tell the guys who, like, really don't care, like, really truly will sacrifice their body play after play. And, I know that's the kind of player that I am. I'll sacrifice my body for my teammates. I just want to open up a lane and get these guys in the end zone. I want to get Jamal Williams in the end zone. I want to get DeAndre Swift in the end zone. And, whatever that takes, whether I got to take on one guy, take on two guys, I got to cut a guy, whatever it is, I'm going to do it. And I definitely have that same, type of grit. So, when he said that in a press conference, that definitely, meant a lot to me. And I know that's another reason why he keeps me around, because he knows the type of effort level player that I am.
What is he like behind the scenes for you as a player that is trying to not only make it in the league, but now trying to make an impact? You have a 2-year deal, hopefully some job security if there is such a thing in the NFL. But what is he like behind the scenes?
I mean, he's like the Army general. I mean, when you have a guy like that, and especially a guy who played, a guy who truly has been in your shoes. I mean, obviously, there's a ton of coaches. Not all of them have played at this level. I mean, most of them really haven't played at this level. So to have a guy who has truly been in your shoes, who has sat in your seats and had a great career on top of that, I mean, that means a lot. That makes you listen a bit extra. That makes you really listen in on every single detail. So to have that guy as your leader, that makes you want to go to battle for him, and see the sacrifice he puts in every single day, to see how much he cares about this and how much he cares about winning and how much he just wants to bring a Super Bowl to our city. I mean, it just makes you play so much harder for him. So yeah, I mean, I'm blessed to have this kind of coach, and even our coaching staff in general. I mean, not even just Coach Campbell, but like you said, to have guys like Deuce Staley, to have guys like Calvin Shepard, all these guys who've played, like Antoine Randall. I mean, I could keep going. I mean, at first we had Aylin, obviously not with us anymore, but to have those level of guys who've really been in our shoes, who have played, who really know what they're talking about and have done it at a high level like that. I mean, if we're being honest, it's just unheard of. That you don't put that kind of coaching staff together every single day. You just don't. So, I mean, I think we're super blessed to have that level of guys with that level of commitment who care that much about the game, who really want to pass on all the knowledge and pass on all the things that they learned during their careers. So it's huge.
I imagine he's the one that refers to you as super back.
Yeah.
Or is that somebody else?
Gotten that nickname now kind of throughout the fans and coaches as well. But I mean, I'm a do-it-all guy, man. I'm the guy that I don't care, whatever it is that you ask, I'm gonna get it done. Whether it's going out for a pass, whether it's making the big block, whether it's going and cutting a guy on a slice, whatever the case may be, I'll go do that. Obviously, I start on all four, special teams as well. So, I'm just that guy who's just trying to maximize my role and do it to the absolute best of my abilities. So.
Yeah. And what you've done off the field is pretty remarkable. And I imagine your background and the way you grew up, your family's influence on you, as well as the way you came into the league. It's among the reasons why you've done so much work in the community, schools and book drives and all sorts of other things that led you to becoming the Lions Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. Can you tell me some of the work that you've done off the field and why that is so important to you?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I come from humble beginnings, and my mom always used to say, it takes a village to raise a child, and that saying has always been really important to me. And being able to be a resource to any other kid's village, or being able to have that kind of impact, whether it's giving time, whether it's giving resources or money, or whatever the case may be, being able to give an experience. I took the kids over to the Michigan Science Center over OTAs, and I mean, if you saw these kids' faces light up, my 5th grade class, Miss Shelley White's class, I mean, like, these kids were just so excited to have this experience and go on a field trip. Like, I know for me, and I'm sure the same is for you, like when we were kids, like anytime you had a field trip, you got to get away from school and go have fun, but also be learning and stuff like that and be in that kind of environment. Those were the best days. I mean, you always remember those kind of days. So to be able to give them those kind of experiences is just huge. I mean, there's a lot of kids in Detroit that are in need. So if I can be that helping hand to them, if I can be just a stepping stone on their way to success and be, that beacon to be able to bridge the gap, between these kids and getting to their goals. I mean, that just makes me so happy. I work with I'll be working with a few schools this year, but the school I've been working with, most closely has been Davidson Elementary Middle School. I mean, I just love these kids. These kids are so bright. They don't have all the resources that they need to be successful. They don't have all the lavish stuff. They don't have all the technology and laptops and the things that the way education is going nowadays is very necessary. So to be able to help them out in that way and do the book drives and be able to come in there, bring some of my teammates and go build Legos and have fun with them in the auditorium for 2 hours, to go and just talk to them and just mentor them and encourage them and motivate them to reach their goals and show them that they can be anything that they want to be as long as they put their mind to it and they work. I mean, that's huge to me. And then obviously I do most of that work with Athletes for Charity. And then another charity that I work very closely with called Wisdom Passage that's based out in California. Right now we're kicking off a program down in Atlanta, really a technology program where we're going to be able to provide these kids with laptops, because just the way, I mean, now so many things are online. We had COVID hit and we saw just how important the internet was, when COVID hit, and these kids, some of them don't even have access to Wi-Fi. So it's like, how can you expect these kids to be successful when they don't even have access to Wi-Fi and access to the internet? We're expecting them to be able to be on technology and access these resources or online books or whatever the case may be. So providing that technology and then just STEM resources and encouraging them into STEM careers. And, we're bringing in people who are in STEM careers to come and talk to them so that they can understand the career path, because for a lot of them, they've never seen people who look like them be in those careers. So helping to put a face, to put a figure who looks like them in front of them is so important for them to see and for them to be like, oh, this guy looks just like me and he's doing this. That means I can do it too, and having them explain their career paths and kind of how they became interested in their fields and those stuff. I mean, those things are so important. So, I mean, that you hear me just as I talk about it. I mean, I'm passionate. I get excited just talking about these things because it's just so important. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's so much more. A lot of people look at you guys as just these, like I said, athletes and have it all, and don't really realize the backstories and what you went through and the struggles to get there and the appreciation you have and really the love that you're giving back to the community. Like you said, you come from humble beginnings. And so it's so inspirational, not only what you're doing off the field in the classroom with kids and, the next generation, but obviously what you've done for your career, just fighting and never giving up. It's such a great story that, hopefully inspires at least one person to chase that dream, even when they're told, hey, no, maybe you're not good enough to be drafted or whatever it is. And so, no, it's absolutely inspirational. Jason, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate it, man.